whatnot, and I fail most of the time.
The thing is, the thing is, Matt, you're a CHRO, so you've got to be you're HR. You've got to be politically correct. Everything's fine. Everything's
Anyone who
okay.
knows HR leaders knows that we are absolutely the worst behaved people in business. So hate to disappoint.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I think we are ready to go, guys. Hi, guys. Welcome to episode 4 of HR Leaders Live, the show where we discuss the future of work with today's most innovative and successful people leaders. As always, I'm Chris Rainey, your host, co-founder of HRD Leaders and host of the HR Leaders podcast. On today's show, we'll be talking about why you should have a professional coach. As always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Matt Burns, Chief HR Officer over at JYSK. How you doing, Matt?
I'm well. Yourself?
I'm good. Jill's left us this week. She's gone on holiday. So that's all we have to say about that. She's away on the beach while we're here. Thanks, Jill. Really appreciate all the hard work that you're putting in. We have 2 special guests today. So we're joined by Catherine Delapour, EQ consultant and founder of Halcyon. How are you doing, Catherine?
How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. And also joined by Sonny, Tannan, content creator and co-founder of Real Life Brand. How are you doing, Sonny?
Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, let's kick things off with the question, why should every professional have an executive coach today? We're going to start off with you, Matt, put you on the spot.
I should be used to this by now, being put on the spot. I'll be honest. I have had a bit of a love-hate relationship with executive coaching in general. I've gone through phases in my career where I thought it was a great idea, and then where I thought I wasn't getting an ROI. Where I'm at now is I'm so bullish on the idea of having executive coaches help support people at all stages of their career. I currently have one now that I've just started working with. And I also spend a lot of time helping and coaching other individuals within my organization and also outside the organization. I think as I look at the value that executive coaches bring to the forefront, for me, it's about having almost like a guide. It's not somebody who comes in and tells you what to do or how to do something. It really percolate ideas and helps you find the path that you are going to get to anyway, but maybe in a more of a straight line than some of us would choose to if we did it organically. So, I think the executive coach piece is so important for professionals, especially now where we have so many competing priorities, more things to do than we have time. Executive coach applies and synthesize those priorities and help you ensure that you're staying on track.
Perfect. What about you, Catherine? What do you think?
The word that comes to mind really in terms of the corporate environment is transition, actually, when people are in transition. So when do people hire me? When do HR people hire me? Usually when for succession planning. So when people are moving from a senior management role into a director role, so manager of managers, or they're moving from a director role into the C-suite. So they need some help, they need support, because this is a very, very different role. We're talking about the ability to influence large groups of people. So your technical skill set isn't important anymore. What's important is your personal brand. What's important is your network, both inside the company and outside the company. So it's a very, very different skill set. And particularly, obviously, because of the work that I do around emotional intelligence, you're on a stage as a leader, you're being watched. Everything you do, everything you say is being watched. And that transition, that change needs support. I mean, one of the phrases that I really like is this idea of corporate athlete. I think one of my clients came up with it. If you think about elite athletes, they have coaches, and often they have 3, 4, 5 different types of support. And there's no difference in terms of top flight executives. The people who are high potentials in organizations, who are leading legions of people, need help, need support. Because of their range of influence, and they are visionaries, they are often innovating, they are creating visions for thousands and thousands of people to follow, and you can't do that alone. You need trusted advisors, you need people to talk to think out loud. That thinking space for leaders is incredibly important, and having a coach to sit down and think out loud with is frankly critical for emotional fitness, for mental fitness. It's very, very demanding being a leader. no two ways about it. You need to invest in yourself. You need to invest in your mental, physical, and spiritual fitness.
Fantastic. What about you, Sonny?
Yeah, so I wanted to say two things. Matt had mentioned the words value and a guide. And it was interesting because Catherine mentioned transition and influence, like a coach, like an elite coach. And so I wanted to start with a quote by somebody that aligns perfectly with what both of them said about an executive coach. So if you're not familiar with the gentleman by the name of John Wooden, he said, "No progress without change, be it in basketball or anything else." And what's interesting is Catherine mentioned coaches. John Wooden is probably one of the most prolific NCAA, so Division I men's college basketball coaches of all time. He won 10 national championships within 12 years. And to Matt's point of a guide and bringing value, John Wooden is known for his pyramid of success, both in business, personal, and organizational leadership. And so it's amazing how both of these absolutely wonderful professionals have just kind of tied it together with John Wooden. And what I think when I think of an executive coach is two things, right? Actually, I'll say three because I'm a fan of three, right? But the two things are the process of an executive coach in the past was usually somebody being brought in because there was something that was broken, or maybe there was a leader that needed help. That's kind of the traditional mindset. Now you look at it today and you think how do I invest from an HR perspective? How do I invest in my leaders to do the things that both of them said, taking on large groups of people, leading teams, contributing to the bottom line of an organization. So how do you take from broken, old to investment of new? And then the third one is, well, what does the future look like, right? So how do you challenge the assumptions of change? Because for me, that's what an executive coach is coming in to do, is to manage both change, corporate culture, consistency across things. And it's not only resources of the businesses, but it's those people, because the talent management is probably the most important thing. So to me, that's what executive coaching is. I love the fact that you ask us this question from the beginning, because it's, how do you do it today? I think there's very different ways of doing it. And so I'm really looking forward to the rest of the conversation on talking through all of that.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, we're off to a fantastic start. What a great topic. And what I love about the first few minutes of this conversation really is we're talking about executive coaching. So I'm sure there's a segment of the population, whether it's professional or not, who roll their eyes and go, "Oh, executive coaching, what really is it just people kind of in a circle?"
That's what I was going to ask. That was my next question. Because,
that's I talked about ebbs and flows of my opinion, through those biases and kind of had to sift through them. I think it's important to note that each one of the people that we've spoken so far, whether it's Catherine, Sonny, or myself, we've talked about quantitative benefits related to coaching. So whether it's this idea of a corporate athlete, I'm very big into, in the limited spare time that I have these days, what I'm spending my time into is really brain science, and the fact that you can enhance your performance in a physiological way. And we don't talk a lot about that. We talk about going to the gym and losing 10 pounds or eating more healthy and putting in the good body. And at the same time, your brain is controlling a lot of the things that you do in business, more so than, your biceps or your lats. But yet we spend hours and hours and hours working on the physical portion of us and very limited time working on the mental and the other parts of the performance that are critical for this context. So I love that we're off to the start. And I agree with Sonny, take some really interesting turns in this conversation as we discuss the tangible benefits related to performance. I think by this, you're going to hopefully hear from us that the ROI is just so heavily weighted in favor of doing this. And I hope we can provide some more tangible examples today of how that happens.
Yeah, I can relate to all of your points. And on a personal note, when you mentioned a sports link, when both me and Shane, our business partner, we both grew up playing professional ice hockey. We had coaches. We paid for the basketball team, for pretty much any sports, to any part of our college that would let us play a sport. Me and Shane had a coach for that section, whether it's a table tennis coach, a badminton coach. When we both got into sales, we didn't do it on purpose. We both indirectly took the exact same approach of, wait a minute, we can use exactly the same approach that we used from our sports and become better salespeople. So immediately we were looking out there for people that can help. And then it became very interesting because it was like, wait a minute, the more we learn, the more we earn. And we had that written on the wall. And it was like, so we were just hungry for more content, more value for, people. And we didn't think about it, coaching. We almost was coaching ourselves, because we were from a very young age. We had coaches in sports from the age of 7 onwards. We always had a coach. So when we got into business, naturally we wanted a coach. We're looking around saying, who's in charge of the sales development here? who can help us out? And when we launched our business, and this is a question I'm going to ask you guys, me and Shane really struggled to identify a business coach, because there's so many people out there. If you go online and type in business coach or go on LinkedIn, you're like, well, where do I start? And that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys. Where do I start? We and Shane, we go to some events and we go to some meetups and stuff like that, but it's really hard to actually identify the right coach for you. And I was wondering, from your point of view, Matt, you got so many senior leaders in your business with different needs, different coaching needs. I'm wondering how you identify the right coaches for your leaders within the business.
It's such a great question. I think when it comes to coaching, it's not unlike any other part of business. The fit is absolutely critical in terms of finding the right coach for the right leader. I actually was looking at on LinkedIn the other day, and I saw a really hilarious post where someone had searched career and life coach and how many had changed jobs in the last 90 days. And it was something like 50,000 people.
It's true. And that's another thing as well. Everyone's, when they retire, all of a sudden they're a life coach, or they're a business coach, or they're a HR coach, So
and I think that how I differentiate coach from mentor, because I think in a lot of cases, that's really what those individuals are providing in terms of services. I think a coach provides a framework and provides some discipline to the process that may not be present in more of a casual conversation. That being said, I think it's really important that as somebody who's looking for a coach, that you think about what's important to you. So I'll give you an example. I'm somebody who is strong personality, and I have a tendency, which will surprise you, I know Chris greatly, to take over most conversations. So I need a coach who's going to put me on a choke chain and say, Matt, sit in the corner and let's have a conversation, and will call me on my bullshit, because I can spew a fair amount of it when I need to. In business, you learn to dance and move things around. And sometimes I need someone to say, no, let's focus on what you just said there and unpack that. Some individuals may not respond to that kind of more direct approach, and they may need a bit more of a nuanced approach. So I think knowing yourself and what is important to you is absolutely critical. And then to answer your question, Chris, for me as an HR leader, I'm trying to do exactly the same thing, but from a third-party perspective. So when I'm meeting with an executive and saying, hey, I think coaching would benefit or that you get some value from this process, let's talk a bit about who you are and let's find you the right fit so that you have a really good experience. I'm surprised that a number of executives that I talk to simply have never had the experience of a formal executive coach. So they honestly don't know where to start, even if they're vice presidents or senior vice presidents. So we start with, what do you need? What is the goals you have for yourself? And who's going to be a great fit as a coach? Because if you can't get past that hurdle, there's not going to be any learnings. Coaching is predicated on the person who's receiving the coaching trusting and opening themselves up to that process. And if you can't get past that point, then everything else after that is just a waste of people's time, both on the coach's side, but also for the individual who's receiving it. So I think that fit, Chris, for me would be absolutely critical.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think?
Shall I go first?
Go for it, Catherine. I can see you itching.
The relationship is everything. So from within a kind of organizational setting, thinking about transitions, thinking about succession planning, thinking about managing change. Typically, an HR department will have a coaching roster. So they will have a group of people that they've interviewed. Matt, I'm sure you've done that within your own organization. So they will have a sense of the type of people, the type of coaches, and the sort of work that they do. And then it's a question of matching that to the goal of the individual. And I would always recommend that you would meet at least probably 2 or 3 people in that process. And it's called a chemistry meeting. And it is literally that. And it's 20 minutes, probably 30 minutes, something like that, where you sit down with the other person and you have a conversation, a very open, transparent conversation. And frankly, you will know probably within the first 5 minutes if this is somebody that you want to work with. But it's trust with a capital T. Because coaching is not therapy. a really, really important thing to put out there, because a lot of people do get confused between the two things. Coaching is not therapy. That said, it's based on the principles of positive psychology. So there is a little bit of, I think the analogy that I like to use is, you're sitting in a car and you've got your wing mirror. So you do glance in that wing mirror and that sort of look over your shoulder every now and then. You look back. So life story is important, because the way we've grown up and the influences that we've had on all of us is going to shape the way we think. And it's that thinking piece, how we think, that the coach allows us to unpack. So the way we think influences our emotions, and our emotions impact our behaviors. And our behaviors, particularly for leaders, is what creates culture. And culture is, what does it feel like to work around here? So those three, and it's in that order. You have thoughts. Some of those thoughts are helpful. Some of those thoughts are unhelpful. But they will, it's like a domino effect. They will then influence the way you feel, which will then influence behavior, which will then influence culture. So the coaching conversations enables the person. It's I think one of my supervisors, when I was training to be a coach, she said, your role as a coach is really simple. It's to raise the level of self-awareness of the person who is sitting in front of you. It's an opportunity to think out loud. Now, leaders, particularly with all the demands that are on them now, and all the change that's going on, and the pressure that they're under, the opportunity to think out loud, and also to be challenged in terms of how they think and how they make decisions, is critical. It's absolutely critical to get clarity around how you think and what may be stopping you, or what biases you have. What are the blocks that are going on? So coaching, the process of coaching, to Matt, your earlier point, it's about, you have a goal. So it's very important, once you have decided who you want to work with that trusted relationship, that you sit down with your coach and you work out, usually actually with a line manager, sometimes with HR, you have a triad meeting. So you work out, what is it we're trying to do here, so that everybody is aligned. That's really, really important, the setting of the goal. It's not just a casual conversation. And actually, I think the alignment of coaching and mentoring is really important. The way I like to work with clients is, yes, you have your coach, but you should also have somebody internally who is mentoring you. And actually, those two levels of support on either side of you is really important to move you forward. And the mentor relationship is often somebody doing the job, but they're maybe 5 years ahead of you or 10 years ahead of you. Whereas the coaching conversation is much more about the way you think, and unpicking the way you think and becoming self-aware. Self-awareness is everything when you're a leader. You need to be self-aware. You need to be very careful about your emotions, the way you communicate, verbal communication, non-verbal communication. These are all, you're being watched. You're in a goldfish bowl.
Yeah. Very interesting. One of the questions I was interested in asking you guys, it wasn't one that we planned today, was that what actually qualifies someone to be a coach? And that's one of the things that I struggled with when I was looking for a coach, and I was looking out there. I was like, what actually qualifies someone to have a coach? Because you get some coaches, and this is probably, I don't know, a controversial topic, that have never even actually worked in a business, and they've been a coach their whole career, and they've never actually worked in an organization, operated a business, but then they're coaching on that exact topic. And for me, so I look at that sometimes and go, wait a minute, do I want to go to the coach that's been there, built a business and successfully solved that and is now a coach, or do I want to go to someone who's academically studied the field and now is a coach? And it's an interesting thing to think about. And I was just wondering what qualifies someone to be a coach?
I think I'm going to trademark the "it depends" tagline, because in this case,
you love saying that, Matt. It's your get out of jail free card every time. It depends.
I mean, if you can just put like some sort of image with me sitting on a fence.
It depends. Yeah.
I mean, it does though. I mean,
I agree. I know what you're going to say, but yeah, carry on. Yeah.
Well, if you know what I'm going to say, I mean, I don't want to ruin that.
No, go on, carry on, Matt. Sorry.
Here's my view of it, and I'm going to bring this back to real quantifiable pieces here. Coaching is a results-based business. The answer is whoever delivers the results. So, and whatever those results are for you, then you define them with the coach up front. That may mean that you need somebody who, to your point, is a CEO who's done startups and bought and sold businesses and scaled them. Maybe really important skills for you to have. You may need somebody who's academic, who comes at a problem from a different perspective. And as Catherine mentioned, I'm guilty of this too. I mean, I've had a fair amount of success in my career pulling on the same levers pretty much the same time. But having said that, as the rules of the game change, you need to pull on different levers. And some of those thinking patterns that you have been rewarded for are no longer working and no longer valued and no longer successful. And I'll give you an example. So, I mean, I love the fact that we have both Sonny and Catherine on, because I talk to both these folks on a pretty consistent basis. I go to Sonny on a frequent basis to challenge myself on authenticity. So when I watch Sonny's content online, here's a guy who it's absolutely authentic. You think you're with him and his son in the forum, just so calm and collected and at ease, which is a really, really hard thing to portray on camera. So
on social, difficult.
Absolutely. So I Sonny's brain and say, like, how do you translate what's up here to out here so that people can relate to that? And I think that's a really great skill. But as Catherine mentioned earlier, versus a coach versus an advisor. So I've identified a skill in Sonny that I want to emulate, and therefore I'll try and model that and get his feedback on how he translates the idea into action. And then to Catherine's point, and also on that piece, when I speak with Catherine, she challenges me to come at things from a different perspective. So things from a different lens, which I greatly value, because most of my experience is more tactile and more having gone through it and experiential, whereas Catherine comes at it from a totally different perspective, and it causes me to look at a problem or a scenario in a different, and I think that's absolutely critical. I think one thing I would say, coaching is another input, and we've talked about self-awareness and having the ability to adjust your approach. I think is another data point. So whether you're getting feedback from organization, whether it's your boss, whether it's your people on your team, whether it's your coworkers, those are all data points, and you trying to absorb as many data points as possible so you can adjust your approach and find the right fit in leading your business. A coach is a person who can do exactly the same, mirror back what you're saying in a safe environment. There's implications by having an honest conversation with a coach, and they can say things you can't say without ending up in a. So from that perspective, it provides a really nice, safe, professional environment to have a conversation. It means they have coaching credentials. It may mean they have 45 years of professional experience. They may have both. So really, it comes back to who's the right fit for you in your coaching, and what kind of value can you derive from that. Again, bringing it back to it's a results-based business. Determine what the results you want up front and find the person who's going to help you achieve.
Fantastic. Could you guys share some experience you've had? What's the greatest lesson a mentor or a coach has ever taught you?
I'll step in on this for a second, because if I can add one point to everything that wrapped back to all of these things.
Sure. Go for it.
Well, only for this reason, because the majority of the audience has a component of HR. So it's dealing with the peoples and the results, right? So Matt mentioned, the objectivity, or having like a direct results, oriented driven basis around everything we're talking about. And for Catherine, so the EQ piece, or, talking about the notes that I made here. So she talks about, how do you build those relationships? And so I think what we're all talking about is, how do you humanize these conversations, but still drive results at the end of the day? And so a couple of things that came back were Matt talked about temperament. So you have to deal with the people. And Catherine mentioned trust, building those relationships. Once again, you have to deal with people. And I would add my third T is time. These things take time. It can be 6 months, 9 months, a year. So I think in today's society where people are, expecting results like that, the HR function, departments, people that run these have many, many things, intangible and tangibles, that all revolve around one thing. It's about the people in those organizations, right? So how do you take that objective, unbiased look, or that outside perspective of bringing in a coach or an executive coach? And then to Catherine's point also, but pairing that up with somebody that's internally and having that mentor that knows what the culture of the business is, and basically drive things together to, in essence, elevate the talent or the people that you have to either attract, retain, bring it on, because you've got a completely different workforce that's both here and coming on board. So it's, how do you clarify their goals, develop those objectives, and then in essence, unlock their potential so that you can keep them and you want them to stay on board. And I'll use a story from my experience, Chris, going back to what is a story for me. So I think it's, for those of you that are watching, it's important to note this. I am not an HR by trade professional. So my background has been in the military, in a profit, and then in a nonprofit, but in business development, sales, marketing, and as a parent as well. So the story I want to share has a component of the military and being a parent. So it's interesting because we talk about how does it take time to develop certain things. And for me, I think the organization, so in the military, when we had a very formal process and we had things that were very structured and outlined, that's where success was at its best for me. I'll translate that into being a parent now. I have a 2.5-year-old son that absolutely amazes me what he does each and every day. And for me, I'm learning how to be a parent and to develop patience by also having a set type of structure, because we record daily videos on LinkedIn. And so it's helping to give him a couple of things. One, he knows that we're going to be recording a video. But two, and this is most important, this is where the executive coach piece comes in, is giving him a choice. So I think either Catherine or Matt had talked about self-awareness or knowing you. They both had said that combination. So for a 2.5-year-old, most of you may think, oh, well, what kind of choice do they really know and have? I don't think that's the right mindset. I think that we have to enable and give them that ability to make those types of choices, where when I'm recording a video with him, I'll ask him, are you recording, are you ready to record a video? And to let him know he has the objectivity to make a choice. I think that's the same thing with executive coaching as well. As you have to make sure that that person is self-aware enough to know that they have a choice if what they're going to do is what they really want to do.
Anyone else want to share their stories?
Do you know what? I'd love to share my story just very briefly, because I've been coached on and off by a wonderful, wonderful woman, a coach who I met 25 years ago. And she has stepped in at different points in my life where I've been struggling. And she's probably 15 years senior to me. She's had a career, she's been a mother. And for me, actually, the greatest impact she had was when I had my twins. And I was struggling. I ended up being made redundant, actually, from the company that I was working for about 18 months after I'd had my twins. And so I was at a kind of crisis point in my life. And as with a lot of female executives, I suffered a lack of confidence. Suddenly I was out of the workforce. I was disconnected from work. I was disconnected from professional relationships. And there was a crisis. And here was somebody that I could talk to, who I trusted, who had been through the same thing. Her children had all grown up at that point. And she was able to make me feel like I wasn't alone and give me a pathway back into work. And I suppose allow me to celebrate the fact that I was a mother and that had value, and I shouldn't worry about that, and to give me some perspective about my life at a point where, frankly, all I wanted to do was hide away from the world of work. So that was a crucial conversation for me to have, actually. And I suppose what was the greatest impact, actually, was self-belief at that moment in my life, which a lot of women who I've spoken to lose confidence at that point, where they go off on maternity leave and they're coming back perhaps on a part-time basis. And I know there's a whole coaching industry that's been developed around kind of maternity coaching and what have you, but it's critical, particularly now where companies are trying to retain top female talent and they're trying to engage with women, and they're hemorrhaging female talent, and where diversity and inclusion is so high on the agenda for a lot of businesses. Matt, I'm sure this will resonate with you, that actually that conversation that I was able to have with an older woman who had sort of been through it, done it, and come out fighting was revolutionary and incredibly inspiring for me, and kind of has enabled me to move forward and kind of also actually reinvent my own life. So thank you, Jo Bond.
We'll tag her in on LinkedIn.
I'll tag her in.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing, and that's so real. And so I'm sure there's so many people that are listening right now that can relate to what you just said. And it's something I've been thinking about personally myself. I was actually, it's the first time I'm going to say this. I might as well say it on a live show. I just found out that I'm going to be having a baby, and no one knows this. Everyone just literally, I've not told anyone. So I've just said it just now. So yes, I'm having a baby. And I've been thinking about that recently as well, about running my startup. Paying the mortgage whilst a baby on the way, and I don't have anyone to speak to that I can relate to that's in my space. All of my friends are, they're in jobs, and none of them run their own businesses. Many of them don't have children, so I do sort of feel a little bit alone on that. That's something I'm thinking about recently. It's just when you're saying that, something that my wife was talking to me about the other day, that she's already starting to have concerns about it, and she's not even left for maternity leave yet. She's she's only a few months pregnant, but it's already on the mind. The worry is already there. She's already thinking about it, and to hear you say that is it's very, thank you for sharing that, because something is on my mind too, of how am I now going to deal with running a business and bringing up a child as well. So very important. So yeah, appreciate sharing that. I'm going to be calling you guys for advice as well. You can be my coach
anytime.
Yeah.
One thing I would just add, Chris, and I don't know how, to follow that story is going to be, difficult, because I think
you should say it depends.
Yeah, I should just log off, because you just can't. Here's what I'll offer from my perspective, and I think a common theme that I'm hearing throughout this entire conversation is that a coach, an executive coach, a mentor, an advisor, helps you navigate. And whatever that is for you, maybe it's life, maybe it's work, maybe it's life in the intersection with work, maybe it's work in the intersection with life, but it helps you navigate. And the best piece of advice that I've received, it's a story that's similar to Catherine's, in that it's been a mentor that's kind of popped in and out of my life at various stages over my career. And every 3 to 5 years, she resurfaces and gives me kind of that golden nugget. And then I kind of go off and do something. And, we joke, I'll see you in 3 to 5 years from now. And the best piece of advice that she provided to me was actually one of the first pieces of advice that I received when I was 23 or 24 years old, was chase experiences, never chase money and titles. And I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. It sounded really cool, but I didn't really know what it meant. Looking back now, I'm so glad that I listened, and so glad that I followed that advice. The money and the titles, if those are important to you, they're not for everybody. But if they are, that's a lagging measure of chasing the experience.
When you get it, all of a sudden you go, oh, that's it. Exactly. I can definitely relate to that. I was always chasing the job title. I came from a very poor family. And so to be working in the city and even earning any type of money and being a manager and having a job was a big deal for my family. Was all very poor. So the first thing was money. And then it was like, I want to be a director. And that was like, but when I got the money, then all of a sudden I was like, not really, it doesn't make me any more happier. And then a little bit more, have a few nice holidays. But it kind of wore off. I was there for 10 years in my first job. And then I got the manager role, and I was like, oh, after a few months, the excitement wore off. And I was like, oh, this is kind of not what I thought it would be. And then it's the same thing when I became a director, and then it suddenly wore off. And then the same thing. So I wish I had that advice.
And I think, I had the advice, but I still fell into the trap. So
you had to experience it though, right? You had to experience it to understand what it meant, right?
Because I wasn't necessarily financially driven, but what I was I felt pressure from my family to achieve a certain level of success. So I'm the oldest of 3 sons, the oldest of 12 grandchildren. The moment I was born, I was destined to be a doctor, lawyer, CEO, or president, or prime minister of some sort.
I didn't have that pressure.
No, and thankfully, I'm probably going to achieve none of those things. So sorry, family. I did my best. But the fact is that, in my family, back when I was growing up, having that title, having the big brand to work for, it was the kind of thing your parents could talk about at cocktail parties on the weekends or with their friends and family over the course of the week. So it was implicitly a pretty, strong value in our family. And, when I made some of the moves that I made to take lateral moves and relocate and leave my hometown, I left when I was 24. So right around the same time I got that advice, I actually, planned to move and never have moved back to my hometown. I'm so glad that I did that, because the experiences that I've gotten along the way, I often will contrast that with, what if I'd never left home? Like, what if I'd stayed in Victoria, British Columbia, where I'm from, and I was still sitting there today? I shudder to think about what that would look like, because I wouldn't have had all the experiences, wouldn't have made all the mistakes, wouldn't have had a chance to learn from those mistakes, which led me to where I am now. And I think ultimately I can contribute more to society more broadly and to the people around me, having gone through those experiences. You don't get humility until you get kicked in the teeth. I mean, that's just, you need to, those things need to happen to you. And I think, from a coaching perspective, the idea that you should run towards experiences that are maybe not comfortable, maybe don't give you those, tangible monetary or title rewards, but will increase the value that you can bring and have you look at life and look at your experiences differently, is just so invaluable. And I would, for those people who are taking notes or thinking about this call, I would just impart that. I mean, for me, it's been an absolute game changer. I promise you, if you chase experiences, you'll thank yourself in the future. And if you do have designs on monetary rewards, titles, status, and again, that's for a certain segment of the population, those are lagging measures. They will come as the result of the investments you make up front in chasing those experiences. It frustrates me to no end when I hear somebody say, I'm sitting in this seat, I'm in this job, and I'm waiting for someone to come by with a wand and tap me on the shoulder and give me my what's due to me. You do nothing. Like you go get it, and you get it by putting yourself through experiences and having people around you and surrounding yourself with talented people that can help keep you on course.
It's interesting too, because you talk about both wrapping it back to executive coaching and experiences. So one of the things before my wife and I we've been married about 9 years now. Before we got married, we were very avid international travelers, where she lived in Manchester in the UK, and I was living on the West Coast of the United States. And at least 2 or 3 times a year we were traveling. And I say that because what you just said, Matt, reminded me of kind of that invaluable, that golden nugget of the executive coaches. They're bringing a different lens or perspective, which somebody said earlier in this conversation. And I tie back these international travels of when we got married. We wanted to experience life, but not just ours. We wanted to experience the world. The world is a huge place, and there's so many different cultures and so many different perspectives, European, Asian, South American, every single continent. And then you talk about upbringing, so social statuses and what people like, where they are expected to be, like what your own parents said versus what Chris's parents said. Or even, Catherine's, the creation of her own business based on her, the experience with her mom. So it's these experiences are the things that we have to do. And so when Ohm came along, he's 2.5 years old. We told ourselves, my wife and I told ourselves, that he was going to be a part of that journey with us. So he's 2.5 right now. And so far, he's visited 6 countries. We've got about 4 more planned out for the next year or so. And the goal for us is to make him, or to allow him to experience those things now, so that when he gets older and can share those experiences with others, and this is that gold nugget of the executive coach, is that taking those different perspectives and applying it to you as that wanting to develop that self-awareness, or clarifying those goals and objecting things for your own organization or for yourself. Those other perspectives are going to help to give you all of those different viewpoints to make yourself better.
One thing I want to add to what both of you just said, yourself and Matt, is that it's hard because the society is designed for you not to go outside and to stay in that lane. And it's very hard. It took me 10 years to build the courage up to leave and start my own company. And the first thing everyone said was, like, everyone around me was like, "You're crazy." Like, my mom, my parents, not my mom, all my friends' parents, my friends themselves were like, you're leaving, you got a six-figure job, you're leaving it behind. You're a manager. Why are you leaving? You're a manager. You're a director of a team. You spent 10 years working there. But I'm like, I'm not happy. But I'm not happy here. My mom was pretty much, I suppose, my coach. She was like, that's what she would say. Are you happy? And I'm like, yeah, Mom, I'm not, but I'm making really good money. And everyone is telling me that maybe I should stay there because I put 10 years of work in. And I had to take a massive step back, both myself and my business partner. We walked away from very good jobs, took huge pay cuts to start our business. I just bought a house and I was 2 months away from getting married, and I quit my job and started this company. So I had no choice but to succeed because I had bills to pay, and my wife would have been pretty upset if we didn't have a wedding. But every single person around me, I'd say 90% of the people were completely negative about the experience. And that was the biggest surprise that I had. I was like, whoa, why does no one want me to succeed? No one believes us, and no one wants me to succeed, which was quite strange that I've had, and yeah, I think it's tough for people in general, especially when you've got family pressures, you've got friend pressures, you've just got society in general, and companies design companies to make you feel like it's not green on the outside and you should stay here. In a lot of cases, I had that with my boss. My boss said to me when I was leaving, "You shouldn't leave. This is the best you're ever gonna do." I was like, "Whoa." I was like, you just made my decision really easy. See you later. And then I started the company. So yeah.
Well, the hard part is that I think the variety of people, and again, we're talking about entrepreneurship context, it's not for everybody. Some people are really served to work in an organization. They have the security and they have the larger infrastructure and those pieces. And that's, like yourself, I spent all of my career in large roles. I totally understand that. As we talk about the thing that's really kind of triggered for me in this conversation is whether you're looking, getting an executive coach from a career perspective, from a life perspective, a lot of the contributing in terms of...
Matt, you're breaking up a little bit, just to let you know.
Okay.
Yeah, now you're back.
Perfect. A lot of the things that executive coaches build in a relationship, if you think about them and step back for a second, a lot of the problems or barriers or issues that these relate to interpersonal conversations. So it's rare that you hire a coach to teach you how to build a house. Like that's a tactile skill. They're teaching you how to navigate a corporate environment. They're how to have success and balance work and life. Common thread with all those things is people. And Sonny talked about was, whether it's travel, whether it's speaking with other individuals around the world, getting exposed to different ways of thinking. Now that it's a global place, is that you run into somebody, see the world exactly like you, is a certainty. Coach allows you with their experience to contextualize that fact and really navigate that interaction in a way that you maybe could not if you hadn't had the experiences yourselves. So you're bringing the coach to the conversation, but you're also bringing all their experiences to bear, and that really extends that you can generate from that relationship.
Chris, I thought it was really interesting what you were saying about when you wanted to leave that job, that people seemed to be quite, or trying to put you off, right? They're trying to put you off leaving.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so where that comes from, fear.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about the fear word, but fear. One of my supervisors, a wonderful woman called Pam Boney, talks about fear as a mnemonic, and it's fear, F for false evidence appearing real.
I like that one.
And that really struck home. And what is stopping people from being their best? What is stopping people from showing up as the best version of themselves? One word: fear.
I know I can relate to that too, because I've done 60 podcast episodes, and the question I ask at the end is, what was holding you back? And every single senior HR leader says fear.
Yes.
Every single one.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very powerful.
It's not real. It's not
no, it's
real.
not. But it's
not real.
It's easy to say it though.
Yeah, no. Listen, it's holding us all. It's holding all of us back. We've all got issues, whatever you want to call it. We've all got, in coaching terms, it's called a limiting belief or an assumption that we hold, and it's based on experiences that we've had growing up. Often that we've lodged something in our brain, in the kind of computer bit of our brain, and it's a belief, a belief that we hold, that unfortunately, if no one's challenged it, it creates fearful thoughts, and that's the thing, and a lot of it's unconscious. And so therefore, the relationship with the coach is about sort of talking openly about, okay, what are you scared of? What's the worst thing that can happen? So fear is a very, very, very powerful thing, and it relates to the emotional bit of our brain, which is the chimp bit of our brain. But we have emotions for a reason, and they're very, very powerful. I don't know if any of you know this. Humans have 3 brains.
All right, I'm ending the show now, guys. You can't just stop there. You can't just stop there. You got to just, before we wrap up, you've got to explain the 3 brain part.
I've been told I don't have any brains, so that's just
It's an interesting concept, and of course, it depends on the definition of brain. But it's about the sort of concentration of of nerve endings, okay? And so there's a lot of nerve endings in the brain, which is up here. But there's also a huge concentration of nerve and neurological activity in two other parts of your body. One of those parts is the gut. You ever heard of the expression gut instinct? I have a gut instinct for something. Yes, you do. You do have a gut instinct, and you should listen to the gut instinct. The other part, the other brain is in your heart. So a huge density of nerve endings are in your heart. And again, if you think about expressions like heartfelt, yes, it's absolutely right. So the idea that you have there's a cognitive ability, which is the kind of prefrontal cortex bit of your brain. That is one part of intelligence. There's also your instinctive gut instinct and then your heart. And these three things together are your power, is the human power. And yet in modern Western industrial society, we seem to have forgotten about gut and heart. And that is your power. And that's what can take you forward beyond fear.
Fantastic.
It's fascinating.
No, it is. I feel like we need a whole new show just around that. Well, look, guys, we never make it half an hour. We're only 70 minutes over time, as always. One day, Matt, I think we're going to be able to do a half an hour show, but we get too excited. So what I'd like to do is just thank you guys for coming on. And I really appreciate you all sharing your insights. And
hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut you off. I want to make this call just a longer, if that's okay. I have a really interesting point, and I think, as we, this conversation, I just want to kind of bring it all home, because the amount of great information, I know I'm going to, after this show, immediately go and watch it again and just take notes, because I was only able to get a portion of what Sonny and Catherine said. Thank you again for joining us today. My linear works. And here's where the coaching comes in. You have your current state, where you are today, and that is different. And then you have where you want to go. And the coach helps you connect the two, whatever that is. So if you're asking yourself what question of a coach, think about it in that context. Where you want to be. And you can do this yourself, but it's faster and more effective and efficient, and the rewards will be greater if you have someone helping you in between. That's an executive coach.
Fantastic. Well, look, guys, appreciate you guys joining us. As for everyone that was listening, please leave your comments in the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Also, to reach out to Catherine and Sonny, follow them on LinkedIn and everywhere they are. I'm just going to say now, Catherine and Sonny, don't blame me when you get loads of LinkedIn messages and loads of messages. So I'm just putting it out there. It's not my fault you decided to come on the show. And also let us know what episode, let us know what topic you want us to discuss next week, guys. We're really interested.
Who is next week?
Oh, actually, saying that, I think we should keep it as a surprise, Matt. Or are we going to announce it now?
I don't know if it's been burning a hole in my chest.
Okay. The next week's guest is the one and only JT O'Donnell. If any of you guys are on LinkedIn, if you don't know who JT is, then if you're on LinkedIn, you definitely know who she is. So that's basically what I say. She's an incredible woman. Really excited to have her on the show next week. If you're looking for a new career and you need advice and guidance, then JT is the go-to woman for that. So really excited to have her on the show next week. Apart from that, I'm gonna let everyone go, and I'll see you all next time. Same time, same place, same strange people. I'll see you guys later. So